for it. So asking what kind of gap we had in our housing and what I could provide. Going through this presentation, it was a 30+ page document. I have a lot to share, so I'm going to just start getting going now. But it's something that I worked on all semester and I'm kind of proud of, but I also have a lot of interesting data points and things to look at that will only, I hope, spark conversation, but also think about how we can kind of change our messaging when it comes to returning on campus for another year. So first, just looking at some common trends. We all know this, so I'm going to go really fast through it, but overall, total enrollment at Winona State has been declining since 2011. That's not something surprising to us. Hope it's not letting me. Oh, there we go. And living on campus has also been declining. So we had our peak in 2011, which I believe is when Kirkland hockey came on the scene. 2010. So we had a little bit of a dip, and then it's been slowly, progressively declining. And then the returner applications and deposits paid have also been declining. So it's a constant kind of trend. Since 2011, we know this, we feel this, we see the spaces in our halls. So that was something interesting looking at, especially thinking about new buildings or closing buildings, kind of what that has meant for our department for the last decade. Next, looking at kind of the trends of when people fill out their housing applications and when applications are paid, knowing that our process has probably changed since 2015. We've pushed it earlier and earlier. But one thing to note that I found interesting, and this is specifically returner applications, in this data piece, 70% of applications happened within the first month that perceivably the application opened. But in the last 2 years, specifically with StarRez, where we can track this number more specifically, 70% of those that return apply for housing within that first month. So we have this big push, we have the returner sessions, we have the tours, but that's really where we get a bulk of our students that stay with us on campus, is in that first month. And thinking throughout the other increases, those could be staff members, knowing that we hire our staff members in April and they sometimes take a while to fill out applications, new transfer students, new international students, but really honing in. And what I found interesting was a majority of our students that choose to return to us apply within that first month. And so what are some ways that we can increase our marketing? What are some ways that we can do better to maybe increase our number of applications?
Well, that aligns with that off-campus push of that is October 1st date. That would make sense. They're kind of thinking about it all at the same time.
So within my plan, we had to look at trends, but then also look at our potential marketing share, specifically for returners on campus. So our current freshman population is 1,581 this year. And out of that, and additionally 625 are current returning students on campus. So looking at next year, that's our market potential. We have students that live with us, they know our policies, they know what it's like to be they know what it's like to have an RA, they know what it's like to apply. That's our main marketing potential. But then incoming transfer students, about 400 to 500 a year, and incoming international students are specifically for our returner process, different populations that we can look at. So how this breaks down into like the current share. So right now we have 31% of Winona State students living with us on campus. I think that's a pretty good number considering that though we do have a majority of our freshmen, it also breaks down to 1 in 3 Winona State students live with us. I think that's pretty neat, pretty fun to know. International students, we have about 43% of our incoming international students live with us. Again, not all of our international students.
How many? So 43% of our entire international population?
Incoming international students.
So that's just that's like a first year number.
Yep.
But that last one wasn't a first year number.
That was everyone.
That was everyone.
Yep. So this one was everyone of our current share of a Winona State student, 31%.
Okay.
Of incoming international students, 43% live with us. And incoming transfer students, 27% of incoming transfer students live with us. So when looking at this plan, looking at what kind of my goals were for this hypothetical plan, increasing our overall marketing share by only 1%, that's an increase of 72 students. And increasing our international and transfer students by just 10 students. That would, if we're looking at the base double rate, that would increase our revenue by almost $500,000. So looking very minimally of 70 students, a total 82 students was the overarching goal, with increased marketing efforts, highlighting different things like that. Next, going into the SWOT analysis, looking at the current environment. I won't go into a lot of these, but we have a lot of positive impacts, especially when it comes to the one lump sum financial aid, looking that we are a higher cost, but have better retention rates than living off campus. I'm gonna just skip through this because it's not super interesting. But then I did a SWOT. So looking at our returner process, why students should live on campus, and doing a SWOT analysis of the group, I've divided into strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Again, this is just looking at positives and negatives. So our strengths of living on campus, really highlighting that it's all in one bill for ease for student accounts and billing purposes. They don't need that capital up front. Talking about how everything's included, there's no hidden costs when it comes to Wi-Fi or electricity or yard care or laundry. We honestly have 24-hour assistance when it comes to our duty phone. Thinking about compared to off-campus, when campus offices close by 5 p.m., sometimes landlords are hard to get a hold of, really highlighting not only our central housing office, but our front desk and our duty program is something to highlight specifically for students that are on the fence or maybe need a little bit more support. Being on the WSU network and free printing, having lots of study areas and common areas, and being able to be a campus leader are all strengths of living on campus or returning on campus again for another year. Looking at our weaknesses, and some of these and a lot of these we honestly can't change, are the perceived cost of living on campus and what it's like living off campus. We'll debunk that a little bit. It says police, but campus policies, so we're automatically going to lose students because they can't drink on campus. That's something that we can't change. Minnesota State is not going to change, but it has a negative impact on students deciding whether they're going to return or not. Limited apartment accommodations. So looking at Eastlake, it fills every year. It's not something that we're worried about filling, but that's kind of what students look for their second year. So kind of changing their ideas in their minds for that second year. Is it the apartments in the quad, or the suites or specialty spaces and other buildings that we can highlight to really get returners into, knowing that Eastlake is not our problem of filling. It's those other spaces in general getting more returners on campus. And interesting enough, the required dining contract, so looking at our peer institutions like St. Cloud, Mankato, La Crosse, Eau Claire, we're the only ones that require returning students to have a meal plan. We don't require it in Eastlake, but we require it if they're in traditional halls or in Kirkland hockey. When a lot of times people have preferred plans for upperclassmen that are dining dollars or a meal or a block plan, but the fact that we require it for all returning students may turn some of our returning students away from living on campus with us. And when it comes down to it, with 600 students living on campus, knowing that 350 of those are Eastlake, 60 of those are staff, we're looking at 190 students that we have. Did I do that math right?
Well, Kirkland has 187.
Okay. So we're looking at around 200 students minus staff that are returning on campus in the main halls in Kirkland. Yeah, around that, 200, 250. So our opportunities and things to look at, so more marketing promotion specifically in that first month to getting students living on campus. highlighting some of the unique specialty spaces in our current residence halls that would be prime for upperclassmen, whether it's say like hidden gems or specialty spaces. We have a large target market that currently lives on campus, and so really utilizing them to get them returned to campus. Our extended cancellation possibility. So now that they can cancel up to May 5th is something new that we changed. If students aren't sure if they're going to return, they aren't for sure if they're going to study abroad, we can really highlight an option of like Winona State being the backup plan, knowing that some of them hopefully will return on campus and actually stay with us. And then looking more intentionally at our transfer and international student population when it comes to highlighting more, knowing that we only have a small segment that are first year students to us, but come from different means. And our threats, so fierce off-campus competitions, that's not anything that's surprising to us. Our cultural norm of moving off campus after the second year, our declining enrollment, and fixed accommodations. We can't build another Eastlake, we can't build another apartment style hall. That's something that takes time and a lot of effort. We have to work with what we have currently. So I did a deep dive into our competitors, and this is where it kind of got interesting, because I heard a lot about like, oh, well, there's so many options off campus, or it's so much cheaper to live off campus. And doing a deep dive with having a financial background, a master's degree, a lot of what I learned was a lot of things were hidden. It was always like $300 or $400 a month, but then in like small fine tax, it would be like, and you have to pay for water, utilities, electricity, Wi-Fi, and security deposit. And so they really highlight this a month, but they don't include those extra costs. And another thing that I found out, so comparing our sister institutions compared to UW System and St. Mary's, we're a little bit more expensive, or a lot more expensive compared to La Crosse. But our apartment style option is actually cheaper, which I was kind of like boasting about, especially when people are like, he's like so expensive. I can say like, well, if you have any friends in any other apartment style housing, we're actually way cheaper. And compared to our Minnesota state system, we're the cheapest, which is something that I didn't know until doing this project. And it's interesting because when I worked at St. Cloud, our director always said in the beginning of the year to our campus leaders, to freshmen, that like he prides that we were one of the cheapest options in the Minnesota state system. And we barely ever heard like living on campus is expensive or this isn't worth our value. And I think that's something that we constantly hear is like, it's so expensive to live on campus. Well, compared to Mankato and St. Cloud, we're actually cheaper. And so St. Cloud and Mankato do like the renovated traditional halls as a higher expense, which at least for St. Cloud, their renovated halls were our halls. They were like, oh, you have a wood frame instead of metal rods. Like you have new furniture in your like living spaces. And for us, like our quad, our Sheehan is their renovated halls in some sense. And I was talking to Paula about sometimes how renovated halls are kind of a ripoff because you can like put on a slap of paint and you're like, oh, it's renovated, or like changing up common areas. It's something that we do often, and so we don't have renovated halls. Our pricing is the same depending on the type of room that you live in, but it's something to really highlight specifically when we're looking at Mankato and St. Cloud. We are the cheapest, and something that we should really boast about. So looking at our product competitors, we can't compete with houses, but looking at the Quad 2.0 apartment styles, there's a lot of different options available, specifically in Winona. So first, looking at the Quad 2.0 / WSU / Bluff County, I didn't realize that these three were all like interconnected and interrelated, but they're the same management, but just under different names, which I was like.
And he had a different name when I came here. Like
yeah.
He keeps rebranding himself.
And it's a way that like.
It's an amazing strategy. If
you have bad press, if you have a bad reputation, you can just call yourself a new name.
Yeah.
Which I thought was super interesting. So we'll go into the pricing, but finding like a lot of different options, a lot of different units, Again, this is a reminder of what our costs are, and this is the cost of the range of costs of the other places. What I found looking at it,
Is this semester cost too?
so this is the annual cost. So
It was the other one our annual cost?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, look, or semester?
This was our annual cost,
Oh, that's it.
our academic year cost.
Does that include the meal plan?
No. So it doesn't include the meal plan.
Okay.
And 3 less months, right?
Yeah.
Right, then off campus,
And
but they're
so-
paying for that off campus,
Yeah.
whether they're living there or not.
And that's one thing that I realized. So in the first budget sheet that I created, we did it by month, and it made living on campus look incredibly expensive. But if you think about that typical sophomore student, they're not here during the summer. They don't stay with us during the summer. So really not looking at the month cost, but looking at the year cost. Because it doesn't matter if a student wants to stay with us for the summer, we have the space, we have the availability. It's actually cheaper to live with us during the summer than the school year. But looking more at doing what is your overall arching cost. We're pretty comparable when it comes, not looking at the meal plan, but looking at rent. The lower end, so looking at the different options, what I found was that Winona Housing Rentals tended to pay for more utilities. More likely than not, students just had to pay for electricity and water, versus Winona Property Management, which is the one that says like $250 a month or $300 a month. You have to pay for everything under the sun. The other thing that I thought was interesting is they didn't talk about, is it a single, is it a double? You really had to deep dive into like, okay, this is the cost to rent this unit, but there's only 1 bedroom. So, okay, it's gonna look more, and they always put like the double occupancy rate. So if you are sharing a room and it is a 2-bedroom apartment, it is $250 a month. But a lot of our students don't want to share a room their second year. There's still roommate conflicts that happen off campus. So we always hear living off campus is cheaper, it's cheaper, it's cheaper. But when it comes down to it, I, through my research, found out that it wasn't actually. And so looking at utilities costs, I couldn't under the sun figure out, with all my resources, how to find Winona specific average utility costs. I found Minnesota State specifically what it cost per month. But so the Minnesota average for a rental property for electricity, natural gas, internet, cable, kind of iffy if students pay for that, and water. This is what we're looking at statewide. Again, I found it kind of frustrating because it wasn't even like on their websites. Like, this is hypothetically what you need to pay each month. These are what utilities are going to cost you. It just said you have to pay for this. It didn't say like you're looking at $100 more a month or $200 more a month. And so other financial.
Would that be the cost per unit or per person per unit?
Per unit.
Per unit.
So we're looking at an apartment, we're looking at a house, and this is the state of Minnesota.
Okay.
And we'll kind of dive down what that looks like compared to us. And so other financial considerations that we don't often talk about, but something that I think we need to work with students educating on. So again, the 12-month lease, we talked about it, starting at inconvenient times. Will sophomore students be here during the summer? The cash required and like the liquidity required to pay per month every year, pay for deposits. Does a student have 2 months rent to pay for off the back? Will they get that back with their housing deposits? Sometimes what we hear a lot of griping when it comes to students. Are all the people that you sign a lease going to stay with you? So in September, in October, are you confident that the 4 girls or 3 guys that you sign a lease with are going to be here next year, knowing that our retention rate is at about 78%, 22% leave? Also, are you going to be friends with them? And so the idea that like a freshman student a month into the academic year should be confident enough to sign a lease with people that they met 4 weeks ago is crazy to me. And so really highlighting like this is a financial document. On Wazoo's list, we see I see 5 or 6 posts a day on like, someone take my sublease, someone take my sublease. And who gets stuck with that bill? It's the roommates that sign on to that lease. It's the roommates that sign into a house because they don't know what to do. And so, oh, everyone's moving off campus, so I'm going to sign the lease. And that destroys like Winona State's reputation, their retention, their connection with other people. And so really thinking about a freshman student should not be signing a lease. And really highlighting that and what are the options that we have in place for that freshman student to sign into. Knowing that they can cancel come May. They can do room changes if they want to move to the apartments or want to move to the suites. There's a lot of other things that we need to highlight and we need to push to better up our numbers of returners, but also to support our sophomore students better. And then again, looking at the cash you need at hand, you need to pay your rent every month and utilities every month. Where are you going to get that capital? For us, it comes right out of your financial aid bill. It's all within our process, within our section. You don't need that $5,000 that year, but living off campus, you do. And so I found this super interesting. I'm gonna just move this. So looking at our most expensive housing, Kirkland Hockey is single, that's $7,450 a month.
A year.
A year. So let's compare it quick to off campus. So if it is $400 a month, which looking at like having a single, like having a bedroom to yourself for 12 months, that's automatically $4,800. Then breaking it down to utilities, spending $83 a month, so that's looking at either you're splitting it between 2 or you're splitting it between 3. You maybe have to pay for electricity, heat, maybe internet, are all like through my processes are things that like almost everyone has to pay for. You're for 12 months, because again, whether you're in your house or not, you're paying for that. And this doesn't even include like installation costs when it comes to like internet. Anyway, so thinking about utilities, thinking about your deposit, as well as furniture, because you're moving into an empty house, an empty apartment. Minimally, if you're spending, like a mattress is $800, but if you're like going on the cheap, you're going to garage sales, you're getting a bed, you're getting a dresser, you're getting a table, just thinking about like what college students do to fill their house. It's reasonable to think you need $500 for a deposit and $500 for furniture minimally. We're already looking at, that's what it's like to have a single on campus.
Oh, don't forget you get air conditioning.
Yeah, air conditioning, like all the other services and things. We're already looking at a single on campus. That naturally includes all these things. Again, to make it more expensive than hockey, Kirkland is single. I talked about and thinking about gas and parking increases when you are living off campus. If you are 5 blocks away, more than likely you're going to be carting to and from class a little bit more. You may get some parking passes or some parking tickets. You might get the gold lot. You may also have to pay for parking at your place. A lot of people say like off-street parking, but some of those are things that you have to pay for, and you're already more expensive than it was than staying at Kirkland or hockey in a single room, which includes air conditioning, support on staff, Wi-Fi, cable, laundry,
garbage,
everything. So the idea that like living off campus is cheaper is not actually true. It's that big picture cost that scares people, but really breaking down the like what does it actually cost you to live off campus, it is the exact same. And also even thinking about sustainability wise, thinking about all the furniture, if you move into a house and you fill it,